Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Ella Isa from Al-Mahdi School Steyr. Today's reading lesson is about a street fight. At the end of this video, students will be able to read the dialogue fluently with correct pronunciation and good intonation, and answer comprehension questions. Before we get started, get the reading book Part A, your reading notebook, and a pen. Before we start reading, you are going to answer the following questions on your reading notebook. What are the usual causes of fights among children and teenagers? What are the consequences of such fights? Do you encourage resorting to violence to solve problems? Why? Let's check the answers together. Number 1. Sometimes children and teenagers may provoke, insult, or call each other names. These actions often cause fights among them. Number 2. Children and teenagers might get injured. 3. I don't encourage resorting to violence to solve problems because things usually get worse and dreadful. A street fight. A father and his son are talking about a street fight the latter has been involved in. After reading the dialogue, decide who's rational and who's emotional. Open your reading book to page 9 and describe the illustration. What do you think the boys are doing? How's this argument stopped? What would have happened if the police officer didn't show up? Please write your answers on your reading notebook. Let's check the answers together. Number 1. I think the boys are arguing. 2. A police officer stops by and ends the argument. 3. If the police officer didn't show up, the boys might have hurt each other. Read page 9 silently, then answer the following questions on your reading notebook. Why was the father disappointed? Who saved the situation? How did the fray start? Why did the son join the fray? Let's read together. A street fight. Father, I don't understand how you got involved in such a rash thing. I'm very disappointed in you. The father does not expect his son to get involved in such a foolish and careless fray. So, this is the answer for the question, why was the father disappointed? Because his son got involved in such a rash thing. Son, oh Dad, come on, don't make a fuss about it. That was nothing, just a few punches, that's all. The son exclaims here that his father gives attention to something not worth it. Father, oh, if you were injured or not is not the point. What counts is the total lack of responsibility and reflection. The street fight could have had grave consequences had not been for that police officer. What did you have in mind when you started this fray? The father is disappointed because his son's action lacks responsibility and careful consideration. Let us now check the answer for the question, who saved the situation? A police officer saved the situation. Son, they started it, not me. I was just passing by when they called me names. Should this misconduct fall on deaf ears? The son is demonstrating how the fray started. Some boys called him names. They used unpleasant words like chicken or jerk to insult him, and he couldn't tolerate this bad action. The son asked his father, should this misconduct fall on deaf ears? Should it remain unnoticed or disregarded? Called me names and fall on deaf ears are two idiomatic expressions. You have to keep them in mind. Let's now check the answer of the question, how was the fray started? The fray started when they called them names. Father, yes, I expected you to be wiser, not to be provoked just by empty words. Son, but I must defend my honor and dignity. That's what you have always taught me. Let's now answer the question, why did the son join the fray? The son joined the fray to defend his honor and dignity. The son wanted to defend his name and worth. To sum it up, the father was disappointed because his son got involved in a foolish fray when some scoundrels called him names. Read page 10 silently from What Solemn Words Still Saved Your Skin, then answer the following questions on your reading notebook. Number 1. Do you think the father was convinced by the son's point of view? According to the father, is getting into a fray a right decision? Why? How did the fight break out? 4. did the son think of the unexpected outcomes of this incident? 5. Why was the son lucky? Let's continue now answering the questions. According to the father, is getting into a fray a right decision? Why? So, according to the father, getting into a fray is not a right decision simply because we give scoundrels satisfaction by picking up the gauntlet. Picking up the gauntlet here is an idiomatic expression. It means accepting to fight or challenge. The father again was frustrated and disappointed because he thought he was more successful in raising his son, and he used to believe that his son is more mature and responsible. So, did the son think of the unexpected outcomes of this incident? The son went into the fight without thinking of the unexpected outcomes. He could have been killed if the scoundrels had knives and switchblades. Why was the son lucky? The son was lucky to have a police officer who saved his skin. Saved his skin is an idiomatic expression that means saved his life. To sum it up, the son thought he was defending his dignity. Indeed, he didn't. However, he gave unschooled scoundrels satisfaction to challenge. Ignoring the grave consequences, the provoked son was involved in the fight. Lucky was he when a police officer passed nearby to save his life. Go on reading page 10 and 11 silently, from well, yes till common sense. Then answer the following questions on your reading notebook. What was the father's advice? How did the son consider his reaction? Was the son convinced of his father's point of view? How are problems better solved? Let's now check the answers together. What was the father's advice? When you'll come across many provocative incidents and uncomfortable situations in your life, you simply can't jump on people and beat them up to force your opinion. So, real courage lies in avoiding fights. So, as you see here, the father wants his son to be logical and responsible. He wants him to use his brains, not muscles. Number 2 now. How did the son consider his reaction? The son considered his reaction idiotic. It was really idiotic of me to react as such. In the end, was the son convinced of the father's point of view? Yes, he was. You were right, it was silly. Let's emphasize on take into consideration. The father blamed his son because he didn't take into consideration what his mom, his siblings, and his friends would think about his behavior. Take into consideration is an idiomatic expression. It means to think about. In the end of the dialogue, the father was pleased that his son had come to his senses and confessed that what he did was foolish. Come to your senses is an idiomatic expression. It means to have the ability to think clearly. So let's say it together. How are problems better solved? Problems are better solved by using common sense. We have noticed through reading 2 different points of view, the son's and the father's. As you see, the son's point of view is emotional because he was provoked by unschooled scoundrels and tried to defend his honor and dignity, so he entered the fray. However, the father's point of view is logical or rational because he thinks that problems are better solved logically by using common sense, and real courage lies in avoiding fights. Open your reading book to page 12 and work out tasks 4 and 5. For the next time, you are going to work out tasks 6 and 7, page 12 on your reading notebook. In the end, my dears, you have to know that life is full of many uncomfortable situations, and you simply can't jump on people and beat them up to force your opinion. So, keep in mind that real courage lies in avoiding fights. Use your brains, not muscles.